Hello, everyone, and welcome to Voxel Viewpoint. Today, we're going to talk about Pathfinder Kingmaker Definitive Edition. And Derrick has been playing this game, and he wrote a little piece on the website. If you want to go check that out, it's live right now. And in that, he said this was the best video game version of D&D that's currently available. Can you talk a little bit about that and explain why that is?
All right, so just for a little history on the Pathfinder series, Pathfinder is made from the guys that worked on the 3.5 rule set of Dungeons and Dragons. They're actually worked with the magazine portion of getting all the information out and weekly updates with that. Once they had stopped doing that with Wizards of the Coast, they decided that they wanted to put out their own version of the game after the newer editions come out, to where the newer editions kind of made the game a little bit more easier and a little bit more streamlined versus like more than a hardcore rule set, which 3.5 was pretty there was a lot to pay attention to. So they modified that, created their own stuff, created their own world, and that became known as Pathfinder. And then here with Pathfinder Kingmaker, we are being brought into the world of Pathfinder with heroes or legends, as they're called, that you'll find and meet in the game if you play the actual tabletop pen and paper game that it is, or if you dive into their adventure card game series. This is what the games are going to be more based around.
Okay. So this is this actually made by those creators of the original game, the Pathfinder board game?
The game is actually made by Owlcat Games,
Okay.
but all the lore and stuff they're coming from is coming right from the source material made by the actual publishers.
Okay. Now, do you know if there's any kind of connection there other than just like the licensing and stuff, or if there's like if they actually helped develop it or anything like that? Like uh like oversaw it or anything like that?
I don't think they oversaw any part of it, but the developers that were working on it were doing their best to stay real close to that source material.
Mm-hmm.
And the way they're launching it is staying real close to those adventure campaigns, where just recently they had announced and did another Kickstarter for Wrath of the Righteous, which is one of the newest expansions to the game,
Okay.
as far as the card game goes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually what the next game is going to be, to follow up the series that they're starting now.
Okay. Cool. So this game had been out on PC for a little while, and the version we're going to be talking about specifically is the PS4 version, which just came out alongside the Xbox One version. Can you give us an idea of like what the format of this game is? Like when you jump in, what can you expect to be greeted with?
Okay, so when you first jump into this game, you can choose to create a character like you would in Pathfinder or Dungeons and Dragons. You could roll out all the stats, do all that. Or you could select a pre-made hero. You can alter his name and some basic features of it, but it'll give you an overall class. Once that's done, you can then select your difficulty of the game, which goes from story mode, which is your super easy, all the way up to the mode that they actually call unfair. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, you could tweak each of those. You could set it up to a level you want. And if there's a feature you really don't like that they give you the option to tweak, you could then turn that off. Like you can turn on permadeath, turn off permadeath. Um, while actually playing the tabletop, you have like death saving throws where you roll to see if you're going to die or not. They have a feature where you can turn that on. So you have a chance for your characters to be saved, or it could just be like your classic RPG. They're knocked out until the end of the encounter. Then after the encounter is over, they'll be revived again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
Um,
saw that in the live stream we did, and there was a whole lot of options you could switch on and off.
Yeah, which was really impressive because, like I said before, I've always praised the Divinity series of being like the closest representation, even better than like the games that Dungeons and Dragons has put out for, console and PC. They've had Neverwinter, they've had a couple small ones, they've had the Baldur's Gates,
Mm-hmm.
um, to where this has actually like pulled in and shows all those mechanics working. Like it'll show the rolls when you're attacking. It'll give you the choices. It'll do little storybook parts, which we'll get into as we talk to it a little bit more here.
Mm-hmm.
So after we select our difficulty and you fine tune that experience to how you want to play, what they really suggest is start on an easier difficulty if you're not familiar with a lot of the mechanics of playing this kind of game.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, you could ramp it up if you need to, if you feel it's too easy. Because a big thing they've said too is once you go up to like higher difficulties, it's about like finding the right way to do these encounters, finding the right stuff to approach it. Like, a lot of games are like, oh, here's this encounter. There's multiple ways to do it. You can kind of push through it. Where this isn't like this. It's like, no, you need the right tools to approach that. And they say have multiple saves, try things different ways. And
Mm-hmm.
so after you select your difficulty, you kind of dive, like, it does really good pacing wise of getting you right into the story. You're there in the keep with the Baron of the land, and he's letting you know, hey, we have this area called the Stolen Lands, which is where the game will be based. There's a bandit king, a self-proclaimed bandit king named the Stag Lord that we want you to take care of. Once you can take care of that threat, then we're going to establish you as the Baron and King of that area, and we want you to build your own realm there, as of not to kind of like to keep a monopoly from happening in the area, to where there's too many barons with multiple estates. They are kind of trying to keep everything nice and even.
Mm-hmm.
Weirdly enough,
Yeah.
so you start.
So I think probably the thing that stood out to me from that was how much of the game was actually voice acted. Um, like
We
all the dialogue pretty much has had really great voice acting, which is you know where the fact that this isn't like a huge big budget game is kind of impressive that they got that kind of talent in there and got them to deliver pretty good voiceovers.
Yeah, which is super impressive. And when we're talking about that with budget and everything, this was a Kickstarted game 2 years ago. It was announced in 2017, and then they launched a Kickstarter. It got funded. It did really well. And in 2018, they were able to release it not just on Windows, but it was on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then when we were talking about that new one that's coming out, they just did the Kickstarter for that. They were only looking to get 330,000 to get that project rolling, since they already have the system, they have the format, it's working, it's been tuned, it's been updated. Within that Kickstarter, they raised $2 million to work on this next game that'll be coming out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really good. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so hopefully the more they can only get better, right? Hopefully.
Yeah, which will be insane because, like, you were talking about the voice acting, and that was one of the biggest things that stood out to me was how well everybody was voiced. Every character was distinct. The way they talked fit the way that character was, and along with reading it, they also gave like the context clues to, like, if they were leaning on something or if they were making a certain gesture, you would have that there to go along with everything that was said to really kind of set the mood of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kept up. Like, that hasn't even slowed down when you're out in like the main map moving around trying to work on your objectives that you're working on. You have to like set up camp, and they'll do little stories in between while you're doing your watches, and the different characters will be talking, and every single part of that is voice acted, and with very, very little repetition as far as those stories and the camping has gone yet. I've done it at least 6 or 7 times right now for the chunk that I have played, and I haven't heard any repetition in the stories and like what they're talking about. And they'll be talking about like things that are happening. The game's very intelligent in that way.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When we did the stream, we jumped into a storybook section that you hadn't seen before, which was pretty cool. It was there was no combat, there was no actual action or anything. It was just all done through. It wasn't narrated, this particular part of it, but it was all written out in like a storybook fashion, and you could make choices based on your crew's skill set and stuff like that. And that's pretty cool that they have a variety of different kind of I guess you'd call it encounters, right?
Yeah, definitely a variety of counters. And like talking about that one, that was lengthy.
Yeah, that
Like
was pretty
we
good.
were we were in that encounter a good like 5 to 10 minutes in something that's just purely story based.
Mm-hmm.
It was super impressive.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, and the
And then
combat itself is like it's pretty real time, and it looked like similar to what you'd see from like Pillars of Eternity or something like that, or Baldur's Gate even. Um, in my
yeah,
opinion, anyway.
I believe like what they've like dubbed their real time system. It's called real time with pause combat system.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what it allows you to do is like each of your characters kind of already acts and does standard attacks a certain way, and you can even fine tune that for your AI because you have a party of up to 6 characters that can be with you
Mm-hmm.
as you get going and find more allies. So they can kind of be preset to do stuff, or you can hit square to pause, and then you can preset what everybody does, and then they'll act it out and move them around based on the choices that you have made.
Mm-hmm.
And they do a good job of like balancing that out because it was actually an encounter that unlocked this feature. Because before I was just moving everybody around doing the attacks, it would come back around, I'd do it again, and then I had found a cave, and it was like, hey, want to go explore here? So I was like, let's check this out, and I was like, all right, mini tutorial time. Here's this pause system that you can use in a new way that encounters go, which have actually for me have made it even more fun because it brings it even closer to how like a Dungeons and Dragons or a Pathfinder session would be.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody rolls their dice, you have a turn order, and then the DM goes through step by step, step by step, step by step. And that's actually how I've been playing the game now as I've continued to adventure on.
Yeah, that's cool. Oh yeah, I've seen. I think that's in most of these CRPGs. Like I said, Pillars of Eternity. That kind of. If you want, you can just do full real time and micromanage everything that way, or you can do the pause and like queue up some attacks. I know like Dragon Age Inquisition had that ability, even though it really maybe on the harder difficulties it was more useful, but in general that game didn't really require that kind of
Mm-hmm.
attention to detail in the combat. It was kind of just like you kind of spam your attacks and get through. The AI wasn't too great.
Yeah.
Do you feel like unlike Dragon Age Inquisition, do you feel that like both play styles are useful and like have their place, or is it more just a layer of like trying to make it feel a little bit more like D&D?
Um, I guess that one it kind of like depends on the person and who's playing, or like it could be like how you're playing too. If you're playing more relaxed, then yeah, that's nice to have that where you can make a couple choices, set it to go. Maybe you're working on a couple different things at once.
Mm-hmm.
But then there'll be times to where you're fully invested and you want to be doing everything. So it's nice to have the option to do both.
Yeah.
Because there might be some times where you can't do, like on weekends when I have my son here, a pause based system's nice because he'll ask me something or I've got to stop and do something with him, but then I'm not going to get hindered because I was in a combat situation.
Mm-hmm.
But because of having this option to either pause it or use a system like this, I can like, all right, I'm at this encounter, it's my guy's turn, so I'll just hold on making this, and the game's going to wait for me. To where if you're in just pure real time, everything's going to be going on, and then if you've got to tweak and make something, you can't really do it right off the fly. So I just think it's a nice feature that games have been adding in more and more. And it just suits any different type of player in any different type of situation because
Yeah.
life
Do you
happens.
feel like it would be more useful like the harder you crank up the difficulty?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
Definitely, because when they get to those like more, like I said, precise encounters, or the way certain encounters happen, or like certain moves are going to affect certain enemies, some aren't. It allows you to really set up for that a little bit better without being like frantic spur of the moment, like, oh god, it's this enemy, nothing's working. Why is nothing working? Oh yeah, I've got to use this.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I like the presentation's kind of unique, where you're kind of going on a quest map almost. You're moving your party between dots on the map, and then they can turn into encounters, which I thought was kind of novel and cool. You don't see that in a lot of these kinds of games. Um, you said in your, like, you've kind of wrapped up your review by saying this is a pretty good place for both newcomers to D&D, but also veterans. And can you explain that a little bit? Like, what's good
yeah.
about it being for newcomers, and why does it appeal to veterans as well?
Okay, so for somebody new coming in, like I said, you can set it down to that lower difficulty where you can get used to how these systems and kind of really like it's a great visual representation of how all these systems are working. Because, like I said, like when attacks are going on, it actually will show like in little brackets. It'll be like it'll show your modifier, like if you have a +1, and then it'll show the role that the game actually did in the background. Which with a lot of like RPGs and stuff, you really won't see that, or you'll just see like the whole damage numbers. You won't see what your stats are actually boosting it.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows us up there. So you can actually see that happening. And then at the same time, the game gives you so much variety of stuff to do. Like I said, we've seen real short encounters where I go in and fight one bandit that's trying to get us on the road. Or, we went in and had the storybook where it was using our skills, and it shows you like what you have in your skill, what's boosted on that.
Mm-hmm.
um, so it really shows you in game format like what would be happening. Yeah, this is kind of a set story, but you're open to explore it as you want. Um, as far as the map lets you take, because I've explored a good part of the map, and I still haven't even found my main objective yet. I've taken down slave traders. I've made new allies. I found out some information about some guy that was cursed just recently, so I can try to help him out once I find the area.
Mm-hmm.
It's
And
just really
it
good
kind
at
of
giving you,
roadblocks you a little bit with
yeah,
preventing you from going in certain directions, with like there was like some sort of mysterious fog that you assume you'll be able to overcome at some point.
yeah, because that all ties into like the main objective, which is taking out the Stag Lord, and that kind of like you'd have that in the Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder setting. Like you have this main objective, and you'll have these kind of blocks that won't let you get so far. And the game does a pretty good job of letting you explore pretty far out and having all these other little stories in there, which you would find out in the world. You have a chance to find that out, just like if you were playing it pen and pencil.
Mm-hmm.
So that's great for new people to see that. But now, if let's flip it to the other side, and you're a veteran, you know how the system works, and you want to dive in here. Okay, you can ramp this all the way up. You can set it to like you would have a game, because there's so many options to set it up to your play style. You know how you are. You could tune that, but then you could go in. You could create your character, roll out the stats. Um, you can get your party together and do this to where everything is more impactful towards what you're doing. You can have on the permadeath like you would in the actual game. You could have on the death rolls.
Mm-hmm.
It can really ramp up towards that experience where like the hardcore min-max players know what they're doing, what they're looking for, or you can just, new players can leisurely explore and learn it. And if they find something too easy or not, then they can bump up those certain parts too.
Mm-hmm.
Because a really good job at compartmentalizing like each different portion of the game and really letting you tune and do that.
Yeah. No, it sounds cool, and like I said, watching you play it on the stream and everything, it looks like I like the presentation. I think they do a
Mm-hmm.
good job of presenting some things that are, in other words, kind of like difficult to kind of convey in like a video game format, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And it ends up being a little bit familiar, but also there's some unique aspects to it that I think they pulled off pretty well. So imagine you're looking forward to seeing where they go. And
Oh,
I guess we'll see how Baldur's Gate 3 stands up to this in comparison when that finally comes out.
yeah, and the next one after that. And then, like, another thing just to add in real quick with this, it is, like, the estimated times to complete this game go from anywhere from 80 to 140 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't, like, either two, this isn't just, like, your, like, 10, 15-hour game that you're used to now. Like, the content's in there, it shows, and it does a really great job of wrapping it up in a nice package.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, so before we wrap this up, is there anything else you want to add?
I think we pretty much got it all covered there.
All right.
It'll be nice to, we'll come back in when we do some more streams and check it as I get a little bit further on in the game, and we'll
See
if any new things pop up.
Yeah.
It seems like it's full of secrets waiting for you to find them, especially with that sort of play times.
All right, let's actually, before we finish up, it should be noted that this version is like the complete version that you can get on PC with all the DLC added in. And when we started up the game, I noticed that you could start with the main story, or you could actually start with the DLC chapters that they added. Now, does that kind of start you at the level that you need to be at to do that? Is that kind of how that works?
That was something I did not get to check out, and I haven't seen much on, but I think from what it's looking at the notes here on both of those, it starts, at least the one Varnan's Hold lot, kind of sets up where you're already established.
Okay.
But it takes place in a little separate area there.
Okay.
And it looks like the other one, just there's going to be an event that would happen that you could go off and do that one too, which is Beneath the Stolen Lands, which is where the main game actually takes place.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that you get the whole package here. So this is the Kingmaker, Pathfinder Kingmaker Definitive Edition. That's what you're going to want to be looking for. And you get all the DLC that they've put out for it. And that's by Owlcat Games and published by Deep Silver. And it's what is the going price on that?
Did we look and say it was $49.99?
I think so. 50. Yep. That is a $50 package. And
which, for the amount of content and how well it's done, like, it's worth every single penny.
Yeah, it seems like it's a pretty substantial chunk of content there that you're getting. That's currently just launched on PS4 and Xbox One, and is available on Steam as well, if that's where you play your games. I wonder if they'll put out a Switch version at some point. I think they'd be a pretty good Switch version.
Yeah, I think it would be a great game for the Switch.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for talking about Pathfinder. And I guess we'll see you next time.
See you later, and thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to see more. Check out voxelvoice.com for all of our great content, and consider supporting us on Patreon to keep our content ad-free and independent.